We will get started here just momentarily. Allow folks to jump on, and I'll get my cheat sheet going as well and pull up our flyer. But hope you all are doing very well. Good week so far. Marco, good to see you too. Thanks for joining. Hello, Jane. Hello, Xiao-Shan.
Hi.
It's a pleasure. Hey, JF. Sally. Great to see you all. How was for those in the US anyway, how was the holiday? Something approaching a break? Decent? It's always tough to now come back and try to be productive for 2.5 weeks while we're baking Christmas cookies and have our attention very distracted. But I can think of no better way, at least, than discussing our topic for today of space governance. So I'm really excited to do just that. And to get a chance to highlight many of our wonderful affiliates who are doing groundbreaking work in this context. So here, let me just pull up this link to make sure that I have the order right. And the goal for this, as you guys might remember, for those perhaps newer to the research series, is pretty informal. We're going to be rolling through some updates from those active in the space governance working group. All of you, of course, are very welcome to join if you're not already members of the space governance working group. We'll hear some highlights. We'll pause after each individual or small group goes and have a short discussion, ask questions, provide suggestions, etc. And we'll talk a little bit more about what will be happening at the workshop itself with this new program. So I'm really excited about all the opportunities here. And I'm sorry, I'm struggling to find the flyer, so that's why I'm filling time for a second. Here we go. But wonderful again to see all of you. Here we go. Okay. Here is, nope, that's the ethics one. Does anybody have it in front of them? I'm forgetting who was supposed to go first. Sorry, bear with me for a second. Oh, this might be it. Aha, I think we found it. Yeah, is this it?
Good afternoon, Angel Perez here.
Hello, how are you?
Well, and yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well too. Yeah. And we'll do just that. We'll do a round of introductions here as we go as well. Here we go. Is this it? No, that's not it either. Gosh darn it. Man, usually I'm able to find these things a little bit more quickly. Well, how about this? We'll just forego trying to figure out what order we agree to, and we'll just ask for volunteers to go first. How does that sound? And we'll just get rolling, since we have a lot to get through and we have now less than an hour to do it. So for those who had prepared, short presentations, who would like to jump on first? Any preferences here? Oh, there you go, JF. Thank you. I just saw that in the chat. That helps a lot. Sam, I think you're up first. Are you on the line? Let me see. Just run through here. Oh, he's just joining now, I see. So I am so sorry to put you on the spot, Sam Visner from MITRE. Thanks so much for joining, but we were just looking at the cheat sheet here of kind of who's going to be presenting in what order. And as you guys see in the chat, thanks again, Jeff, for copying that. We have Sam, we have Xiao-Shan, we have Daniel, Eytan, Marco, and then I'll provide kind of a little bit of a roundup, but we'll pause as we go here between each one to have a short discussion. And again, the goal is just to highlight the diverse range of research going on within this broad field of space governance and the ways in which the workshop and the methodologies and frameworks that we're known for can help contribute to understanding and managing some of these challenges. As you guys know, talk about rip from the headlines in the last few weeks alone, right? With various issues around orbital debris and space weaponization and, spacewalks having to be postponed because of orbital debris, you name it going on. So these are very front of mind increasingly. So wonderful. So I'm not sure if you're able or willing still, Sam, to kick us off, but if you are, we'll turn to you first and then we'll just kind of run down the list from there.
Sure, thanks. Scott, good to see you again. And by the way, I don't know if you've seen my earlier correspondence today regarding University of Tulsa.
Oh, excellent.
I've passed it to my network. I've also passed it to some of my students. So we'll see if somebody takes advantage of the opportunity.
Good.
Anyway, yeah, good afternoon. I'm Sam Visner. I'm a tech fellow at MITRE, which, as you may know, is a not-for-profit corporation that manages 6 of the nation's federally funded research and development centers. And in fact, until about this time last year, I served as the director of the National Cybersecurity Federally Funded Research and Development Center. And I'm currently a tech fellow working on a number of issues, mostly, though not entirely, related to cybersecurity. I also serve as a member of the board of directors of the Space Information Sharing and Analysis Center, or SPACE ISAC, which is an information sharing organization that focuses on the security and resilience of the nation's space systems. And in fact, one of our efforts, in addition to putting in place an unclassified information sharing architecture for the commercial space sector, has been a campaign to get the government to elevate the importance of space systems as an aspect of the nation's critical infrastructure. In fact, I've just been working a few minutes ago on an op-ed that'll be published shortly and via satellite. It's being co-authored with my friend and colleague at Aerospace, Dr. Ed Swallow. So that's one of the things that we're working on. I've been a strong advocate and will continue to be a strong advocate for the development of a whole of nation cybersecurity research and development strategy that includes the government, the private sector, academic organizations, and others, as we did with HIV/AIDS, as we did with aerospace science and technology, and as we did with nuclear energy, though updated with the tools that we have today. And I'm giving specific focus to the research and development needs to do a better job of securing space systems, which are a special and very interesting and challenging case, given the tyranny of space power, weight, and cost associated with those systems. I teach as an undergrad, teach as an adjunct at Georgetown on in the program of Science and Technology and International Affairs on cybersecurity policy, operations, and technology. So, I'm just enmeshed in this, and happy to take any questions that anyone might have. Thank you, Scott.
Oh, thanks so much for joining, Sam. Yeah, no, it's really exciting work, and look forward to working with you and MITRE and Aspen on this capstone project in the spring as well. That's going to be a lot of fun. And this is around, norm building efforts, especially with that intersection of cyber and space in mind. Yes, and a lot of these discussions are, just getting going. So let's continue that briefly. Any questions, any comments for Sam and some of his work at MITRE, and you can obviously say a bit more about what Aspen's up to as well, if you'd like to, Sam.
Yeah, the Aspen Security Forum, part of the Apen Institute, is one of the premier platforms for the exposure of policy and other ideas on national security and policy, and foreign policy. So I was privileged to speak at Aspen this year on just this topic, and MITRE and Aspen are starting to work together on the development of ideas for approaches to improve space system cybersecurity, whether or not they're regulatory, based on more controls, best practices, market incentives, or other tools. That's one of the things on which we're preparing to work, and we're putting in place a statement of work with Aspen to get that work underway. In fact, that's another thing that's being worked in real time, almost around this meeting. So that's one of the things that we're doing. One of the efforts that we've just kicked off, by the way, with the Space ISAC, is an effort to improve the security of the supply chain of space systems, which are far more complex, numerous, and global than they used to be when we had a smaller number of bespoke space systems. So now we actually have an intern at the ISAC working from Georgetown University, who's helping us put a survey together to try to understand the level of visibility that companies have into and the security concerns that they have regarding their own supply chains for space systems. So the range of activities that's underway now is really quite impressive, and we need more willing arms and legs, believe me.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, Sam, would you like for folks to reach out to you directly? if they want to get
Yes.
involved in some of those efforts? Is that okay? Or
Yes, although I'd be
okay.
grateful if in doing so, they would, Scott, keep you in the loop since you're the
Oh,
one who,
sure.
since you
Yeah,
brought me to this dance, you know, as I say,
certainly.
dance with the one who
Certainly.
brung you. So yes.
Absolutely. And we can use the listserv for these purposes, guys, but feel free to also just use the chat box for email addresses, etc. And Scott David, I see your hand going up. And just as a reminder, feel free to, use the raise hand function, use the chat box, whatever you're comfortable with. Over to you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you, Scott. Hey, Sam, just one quick question. My name's Scott David. I'm from University of Washington Applied Physics Lab. Just a question. What's the general sense of the applications of co-management regimes like the Commons, Law of the Sea Treaty kind of things from physical space in outer space? I know that's a big nut, but I'm just curious about how often those things are invoked by people who are not familiar with the Commons. How often is that popping up in a variety of domains in that space, which is a trans-sovereign space? What are your thoughts on that? Thanks.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you first for lobbing a softball at me like that. That was most considerate of you. I'll bear that in mind. So here's where that stands. Peter Scharfman and MITRE and I just published a paper that was given at the AIAA Ascent conference just about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. And we argued that there are a couple of ways of approaching this issue. And the issue that I'm going to answer your question by talking about norms, which is another way of thanking you for the question you asked, going off and answering the question I meant to answer in the first place, and then get you to thank me for answering your question. The oldest Washington trick I know. But we were discussing this from the perspective of norms. And it seems that there are several approaches to this. One is to say we need norms for the cybersecurity of space systems. And ask yourself, well, how have we done with cybersecurity norms in general? And that's, frankly, we haven't done all that well so far. We've seen a rise in state-sponsored cyber exploits and some attacks state on state. Iran and Israel are now in a tit for tat. We've seen ransomware attacks now against our critical infrastructure, our food supply, JPS Meats and Colonial Pipeline. And we've seen increasing capabilities on the part of adversaries and rivals. So it's not yet clear that norms in cybersecurity have been effective. On the other hand, there are unwritten norms relating to space systems that already exist. And while countries have demonstrated the capability to destroy satellites in orbit, so far, more or less, they've not done that to other countries' satellites. In large part because a lot of satellites are national security systems. So an attack on somebody's national security system isn't just vandalism. It could be considered as warlike or presaging, armed conflict. So far, those norms seem to have held. And the position that Peter Scharfman and I took is that to establish norms relating to the cybersecurity of space systems, we should start with the norms that already seem to exist for space anyway. And that one might, taking a look at the global commons question that you asked, Scott, start with the Outer Space Treaty by attempting to amend Article 7. That's where we're starting here. And if we can't get other countries to sort of agree to that, though I think it may be possible to do so, then issue a statement that says these are the principles the United States stands by. If we could, we would amend Article 7, but absent that, we intend to abide by these principles, and we will expect other countries to abide by these principles, at least as they relate to the security of our systems. And I think that's a position that we've started to advocate, and I think you may see more pressure. You may see more visibility around that position. I also think that there's an opportunity related to the recent statements by the Vice President, Kamala Harris, who was talking about the need for the United States to work cooperatively with other countries in space to advance space technology and to do so safely. So that's a bid to raise the level of the cybersecurity of space as a global commons in a way that would be useful. my own concern is always that, efforts to do this in cyberspace as a global commons have to some extent foundered. Because while we regard cyberspace as a global commons, other countries regard their part of cyberspace essentially as sovereign territory. Whether or not a similar divide will occur here, I don't know. The bottom line is, how do you make space sovereign? Everybody's satellite goes over almost everybody else's country. So I think the potential for this may exist. And the way in which we're talking about it is to see if one might first approach an amendment to Article 7 of the Outer Space Treaty. That may be more of an answer than you wanted, or it may be tangential to the question that you asked. But as we say, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Does that help? Was that useful, Scott?
It was very useful. And one of the things I was chatting along, just taking some notes and writing things. One of the things that I'd love to explore with this group, and something we're fussing with now with an NSF program, starting to think about, is whether we might do a conference on, a light conference online on co-management of risk in physical space, physical oceans, outer space, and cyberspace, and really stepping it up and see which tactics and strategies and approaches can work in a scale independent way across domains, which don't, and why and how. So something we can talk about it later, but thank you very much. I was very interested.
Well, that would be fun. Let me come back with you one thought, and then I'll leave this alone. In talking, and it's been some years, to Mike Hayden about this, some of you may know, was at CIA, and before that was director of NSA. He made a point about cyber that he said makes it similar to space, and that is effects are much faster. It's one thing to talk about, the security of the commons, the practice, for example, of global jurisdiction on the high seas outside of anybody's territorial waters. But what happens in space or in cyberspace happens at an enormous velocity. And therefore, one has to be able to figure out how to identify and to deter and to forestall acts that take place with, in the absence of a lot of time for decision making. And that is a head scratcher. I don't have the answer to that, but I think that's one of the things that makes those two sectors somewhat similar. All right, I'll stop. I saw there was another question.
These are great ideas, yeah, and I would love to explore them more fully. Scott, David, this is just the kickoff, right? And we will have certainly follow-up discussions. I would love to nerd out on all of these topics.
Yeah, I think there was another question from Eytan, but your hand is down. So
there was, but I think just in the interest of time, since we still have 5 more to go, Sam, I'd suggest maybe we just continue the discussion using the chat function as we go here, and we'll just make sure that everybody has time to present their work. But Eytan, did you have a quick interjection there before we moved on?
Maybe just a quick note that if I understand right, you are examining mostly national policy and regulation. If I understand right, we are starting a project that in Indiana is a partner also on the issue of the cyber and outer space. So we will I will reach out to you afterwards via email.
Are you working with Sunil Shenoy in Tulsa?
No.
Okay. Well, no, I'd be happy to talk with you at any time. Now over to you, Scott. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Sam. What a fantastic kickoff. And as everybody can tell, right? I mean, we could dig into half a dozen issues that you just raised easily for the next 45 minutes. But that's what's fun about these working groups. But Xiao-Shan, please feel free to either continue in a same direction or take us in a completely different direction. Over to you. And thanks so much for joining.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me well like this?
You're loud and clear. It's perfect.
Okay,
yep.
Thank you. So it's actually my first time joining this meeting, and I did prepare like a very short presentation, but then I realized now this is more of a dialogue format. So I'm not so sure, should I,
well, if you prepared it, Xiao-Shan, and you would like to share it, feel free. Feel free. That's completely fine.
Yeah,
I
okay.
can truncate my remarks for sure at the end.
Okay, so I will keep it short and let's take it as a teaser for now. Okay, so I will share my screen. Can you see my slides?
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, all right. So to introduce myself, I'm a research scientist in the social sciences department at EAWAG in Switzerland, but I'm also affiliated with Utrecht University as an external assistant professor. So I have been working on a research agenda surrounding something that I call EARTHSPACE sustainability. And today I just want to share with you some of the recent research activities that I have been doing with my students. And a core question that we are answering most of the time or trying to answer is that how can we ensure a sustainable and functional EARTHSPACE system as we move into the future? So as we see now that following the opening of the space sector, there are many different new opportunities across different industries or technological realms, and ranging from satellite navigation to internet constellations or even to Mars missions, for instance. But it's important to look at each of these as characterized by very different features, occupied by very different actors with very conflicting interests. And we start to realize that these different space-based systems can actually be the next generation infrastructures for sustainable development on Earth. And relating to what, for instance, Scott was saying, how can we relate to a risk? A way to look at this is to broaden what we define as risk. To understand that the moment the space sustainability environment is not well managed, these base infrastructures can be severely disrupted for Earth activities. So we know that all these different opportunities for sustainable development on Earth comes at the expense of orbital sustainability, ranging from radio spectrum issues to dark night sky. So how can we ensure a very sustainable and functional Earth space system into the future? So we use a very specific method that I developed with my colleagues that we call social technical configuration analysis. The core objective is to understand how different actors across different sectors subscribe to different value orientations, and they tend to have conflicting interests. How we do this is that we map discourses among types of actors, and our data for what I will be sharing with you shortly today from newspapers, magazines, and government documents, because we understand these as different sense-making platforms. But we can apply the same methods by interviewing different actors, for example. So we use systematic search string protocols and coding scheme, and in order to derive two types of networks. So one is concept networks. We want to see how different actors are sharing similar values, ideas, or concerns when they associate with the sectors that they are occupying, in order to detect any orchestrating themes emerging from these discourses. And then we mirror these sort of concept networks into something that we call actor networks. And from here, we can see which actors are sharing similar ideas, value, interests, or concerns. And clusters of actors can basically indicate coalitions of different actors that share similar values, even though they might not have explicit collaborations yet. So a very quick understanding is that today I just want to focus on how do we derive actor configuration networks. So for instance, if ESA and NASA both subscribe to a certain idea or concept, as opposed to US government, which suggests or subscribe to the idea of a central governance model, for instance. So when we project it into actor networks, we see that ESA and NASA establish a link because they subscribe to similar values, similar concerns. But then the US government has no links with the rest of the two actors. But then actors refer to more than two concepts or one concept. So the more they refer to different concepts from each other, the links between them get weaker. So that is how we then derive this sort of actor networks, something that I want to show today. So if we compare the two sectors, for instance, Earth observation and internet constellation sectors, both of these sectors, they are occupying most of the time the low Earth orbit. And I want to give credit to my students who work very hard, Sanya Bandel and Alison Coy, as well as colleagues who have contributed to the methods, Jonas Heiberg and Ben Hout. So if we look at the global Earth observation sectors and we cluster all these different types of actors into different groups of actors. So please do not try to read it. We are still trying to improve the visualization. We see that there are at least three major clusters. For instance, in the green cluster, these are actors that value global mission the most. So this group of actors, they believe that using Earth observation can provide many opportunities to accelerate sustainable development on Earth. And this can be achieved through multilateralism. And I have to be like very quick, so I will skip the rest, but come to a different sector now. For the global internet constellation sector, we basically also identified three major types of clusters. And if we try to understand that the cluster, the green cluster, consists of actors that actually increasingly value the market or profit potentials of the internet constellation sector. So we can imagine big companies, billionaire companies that subscribe to the market values. But there could also be actors that simultaneously concerned with orbital sustainability. So we call this ecology market field logics. So the actors in these green clusters, they are actors that are trying to promote market uptake of constellations, but at the same time, pressing more stringent regulations on these internet constellations companies. But then we have a group of clusters companies that are only and prioritizing market potentials. And then we have the purple cluster. These are actors that start to value the market potentials, but also at the same time posing questions like, can internet constellations really help us reach the unreachable? So we call it balancing community and market field logic. So the sad story out of this is that we see market values really penetrate the whole internet constellation sector. Market and profit potentials is really important. So I do have to stop here now just to emphasize that we continue to work along these dynamics across different sectors to see where are the most promising opportunities or what are the most pressing challenges among multiple actors across different sectors in order to achieve collective actions when it comes to maintaining airspace sustainability. So let me stop here, and if you would like to find out more, please reach out and we can talk more. Thank you.
Was so cool, Xiao-Shan. Thank you so much. I feel like you needed a round of applause for that. Again, we're not able to do justice to any of this in this limited time that we have now, but please, questions, comments, discussion points here, or potential synergies with your own work for Xiao-Shan. I love the network analysis that you were doing there. And I feel like, Eytan, you can speak more to this, and JF, of course, as well, but I think that could dovetail a little bit with some of the work that is being done otherwise. That we'll talk more about.
So Xiao-Shan, if I understand the research correctly, and I may not, it provides an opportunity, maybe a predictor as to which approach, is it a regulatory approach? Is it an incentives approach? Some other approach that different sectors of the industry might take, and it might be suggestive as we start to bring stakeholders together as to what certain stakeholders might find attractive in terms of a governance mechanism. Is that what you're saying?
I would try to be a bit more specific in the sense that what I was sharing with you essentially was how we cluster actors based on similarities of values. What matters most to this group of actors? So for instance, if we saw three clusters of actors, so we sort of have interpreted that each cluster of actors, they pursue a similar line of value orientations. For instance, market clusters. So these are actors that only value profit potentials. If we see market ecology cluster, these are actors that start talking about balancing market potentials and promoting more stringent regulations. If we see market ecology cluster, these are actors that still value markets, but they start to question where are these internet constellation services are actually really deployed. It's the so-called bridging the digital divide. Is it really happening? So we see what are the most important values that are driven these actors. Because to promote multilateralism, we need actors coming from different levels. And why is it so difficult to actually drive collective action is that because actors coming from different sectors, they have very different values and concerns, and most of the time they are just conflicting with each other. So I guess at this stage we are saying that we really have to better understand what matters to different types of actors across different sectors. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Josh. That's
Thank
great.
you. That's helpful.
And
I do have to, I just want
sorry.
to
Go ahead.
I just want to quickly say that I have had a couple of exchanges with Jean-Frédéric before, and we do see that moving forward we should really discuss how our research could complement with each other. So for instance, this sort of sector-based analysis, how does it fit into, for instance, networks of institutional arrangements or global institutional arrangements? How do they interact? So I'm really looking forward to exchanging more on this. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Danielle, please. And if you're willing, Xiao-Shan, there's some good questions, comments from Scott, David, and others in the chat there too. But Danielle.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I'll be brief. I'll just highlight that I teach a class at MIT where I'm on faculty. I teach it in the spring semester. All of you are welcome to pass through. It's called Space Technology for the Development Leader, but it takes a nice parallel approach of using system architecture to analyze situations in the space community. But I often do it at a much more local scale, maybe looking at one case study rather than looking at like sort of global relationships. So it's nice to see your work, Xiao-Shan, to see how we could take similar systems modeling and either look at like a whole field or look at, kind of one situation. I think it's a really nice comparison. And we talk a lot about sustainability on Earth and in space. I love your title. I'll probably follow with you to invite you to come visit the class. And actually, all those who are on, if you'd like to come chat in the class, it's a great place for talking to students. And often we share the recordings afterward for people to see. So I'll give the link for last year's class where you can see the past recordings. And I'd love to recruit speakers for next semester. Thank you all.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is a great function for the working group as well. And thanks so much for joining, Danielle. That's fantastic. And just in the interest of time, because we still have 4 to get through, believe it or not, maybe we can just keep moving if that's okay, Xiao-Shan. But I encourage you to keep answering questions and engaging in the chat if that's okay. And of course, this is just the beginning. So would love to continue to dig into this more deeply, including through a conference, which would be great. So it looks like, I believe Angel, right? Or Angel, excuse me, you're pinch hitting for Daniel from the U.S. Geological Survey. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, excellent. Well, if you're ready to go, over to you, sir.
All righty. Thank you very much. My name is Angel Perez. I work for the Civil Applications Committee. This work working under the U.S. Geological Survey. So before anything else, I want to give you a little bit of history, a small history about the Civil Applications Committee and how it all began. First of all, we are a small team at the NCAC, and we are located in Reston, Virginia. There we coordinate remote sensing technologies in support of worldwide volcanoes and disaster monitoring efforts by leveraging satellite sensors and systems provided through the U.S. intelligence community and Department of Defense assets. So it all began with the launch of the Corona satellite. This was back in the 1960s, where scientists began to understand the changes in the environment and how is it that we needed to enhance the U.S. national security. Now, the challenge that we had is that the federal oversight complicated civil access to classified system data and products. So the community, the Civil Applications Committee was developed as an overhead for this remotely sensed data, also known as the CAC. We were chartered by the president in 1975 through a memorandum. And the latest charter now in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, is co-signed by the Secretary of the Interior and Director of National Intelligence. And so what the CAC does is it ensures that if federal civil agencies have access to these classified remotely sensed assets to meet the statutory missions in ways that do not threaten the civil rights, civil liberties, and personal privacy of your citizens. So here it falls when it comes to the governance and part. So the big mission of the CAC is to facilitate appropriated civil uses of overhead remote sensing technologies and data collected by military and intelligence overhead capabilities, including commercial. The CAC is operated by the staff of federal employees and some contractors from the USGS on behalf of the Department of Interior. And the Department of Interior is the chair of the committee. And the vice chair is somebody from, not from the Department of Interior, I believe from the USDA. So we host a lot of working groups. Some of these working groups includes the Global Fiducials. We have the Thermal Working Group, and so many others that together we collaborate not only within the USGS, but we collaborate with other government agencies, civilian agencies, schools like the University of Arkansas and Alaska. And so some of the things that we do is mapping, charting, and geodesy. We also do hazards and disasters and public health assessments, environmental monitoring, completing scientific research such as Earth system investigations, providing land use, water use, and natural resources management, supporting law enforcement, regulatory, and homeland security missions, and deriving information to support national policies and objectives. I know I mentioned that we collaborate with different organizations, agencies, and some of these agencies are the Department of Homeland Security, Defense Intelligence Agency, National Reconnaissance Office, and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and so many others, including educational institutions. So we basically, are responsible for disseminating the information to federal users and civil users on policies related to the proper civil use of data protection and intelligence. We receive and approve all civil requests, assigning priorities to such requests, and acts as the interface between the federal agencies and the intelligence and defense communities. The CAC, the Civil Applications Committee, as we refer to the CAC, we also represent the civil community in national security forums and serves as an advocate for policies and technologies of common benefits for the civil defense and intelligence community. So here in the office, what we do the most is that we receive a lot of requests from different agencies and organizations for imagery. And this imagery, we will process this imagery and provide this imagery back to the user who is requesting the information. Given that if the imagery falls under a classified secret, usually is a government entity, government organization, but we also have unclassified information that can be shared within organizations and outside of the government organization. And this is just a general outlook of what we are, a little bit of what we do. I do appreciate the opportunity that is given to us to be here with you and collaborate, to learn, and to share information. And what I will do is I will leave in the chat my email as well. So if there's any questions, I'm going to leave my information and my director's information if you guys want to communicate with us as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Angel. And thanks for reaching out as well. We had a great conversation, I think, just a few weeks ago about all the different ways that I feel like the workshop community could be useful to the USGS. So this is just one of them. So any kind of quick discussion points or issues that came to mind based on Angel's comments there? Of course, you can use the chat box, and as you said, Angel, email directly.
I'll just highlight that
Scott.
I put in the chat. I won't repeat it, but Angel, that was really cool because you start thinking about risk.
Yep.
We're not talking about assets anymore. We're not talking about grazing. We're not talking about water. We're talking about risk. And most of what we're talking about is risk. And so it's really fascinating because the commons was traditionally kind of the spoiling of the commons. Spoiling was a pillaging, right? A pillaging of the commons. And that's an asset typically. But the pillagee, I guess, the person who's pillaged has the risk of pillage. I don't know if there's a pillager and a pillagee, but I make an apology for my pillagey comment, but but it was fascinating, right? Because if we start thinking about risk, wow, then anytime there's an information differential, you start to get into the looking at different perspectives on the same market, and that creates differentials. We have silos. Like the last presentation, we were talking about business people and legal people and technical people being in silos. They're working on the same system, but there's an intrinsic information commons, let's call it, or something like that, and awareness commons, which is not shared and therefore could be pillaged inadvertently, right? So it's a fascinating thing to start thinking of the risk stuff there. So thank you for those comments. Really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Thank you. And the risk, we work a lot with different types of areas. Like we have wildlife and fisheries, for example. We are monitoring how illegal fishing is as an example, is growing. And so this is one of the things that we use satellites. So to do detection of what is going on, what is happening, who is in what area, and and so many other things that I am not able to disclose here. But it's just. We do work with a lot of, it's a lot.
Oh, it certainly is. And there's so many my goodness, from data governance to environmental or natural resource governance issues that you guys are exploring. And so anyway, I think it could be a fantastic partner for many on the call. So thank you for bringing this more fully to our attention. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
And the infrastructure, theme keeps coming up, as many are witnessing. I'm reminded of just last night in Y673, we were talking about, infrastructure and some of Brett Frischman's work and so many others. And as you guys are seeing, space as a critical infrastructure is incredibly front of mind right now, and satellite infrastructure just being one component of that. So there's a lot of good work, a lot of groundbreaking work that needs to be done here. I think the workshop can be really useful in that, and all of us. So it looks like Eytan and JF, you guys are up next from Laval University. Thanks again, Angel. And then we'll turn to Marco after that to hear about some updates. And Inza, of course, if you'd like to chime in on the Space Commons work.
Great, thank you. I'll go very quickly because not only in the interest of time, but also because I think many of you are familiar with this project. So this is more update than anything else. So we're still collecting new data. So for those of you who are not familiar with this project, we're trying to map the ecosystem of space governance. So we're collecting information on space actors and on space arrangements or agreements. So for example, this is where we at in terms of the number of space actors, various types of space actors, public, private, doing different things, but involved in space in one way or another. So we wanted to measure the growth of this community. This is the number of different countries based on where those space actors in the first slides are located. So we can see that there's an increasing number of countries that host space actors, public or private. Again, here you have the different types of space actors. Some of them are universities. You have public, private, international organizations. As you can see in this color here, green, there's more and more private actors. This is not something surprising. This is something that we all know, but at least now we can measure it and locate exactly when this growth actually occurred. We are especially interested in space debris, but we don't look only for actors that are working on space debris. We want to be able to locate those actors within the broader ecology of space governance. So actually the number of space actors that are devoted or that are conducting activities primarily related to space debris is it's a relatively small number compared to the rest of the ecosystem. And on those working on space debris, most of them by far are based in the US, but also a fair number of them in Japan, China, and France. And so, as I said, we're interested in actors, but we're also interested in the arrangements arrangements could be agreement, could be contracts, could be code of conducts, could be memorandum of understanding, any type of formal agreement that are conducted among those space actors. And here you have the number of new arrangements that have been concluded. So we find new ones every week. Every week we receive new ones. And we have a team of assistants basically filing access to information, and soliciting embassies, going in the archives to look for them. So here, this is the number of new arrangements. So you can see that there's a rapid proliferation in the last few years in terms of those arrangements. And so much so that the number of new arrangements is growing faster than the number of new space actors. So what it means is that their collaboration and cooperation among space actors is growing, is getting more intense, actually. So if there are more agreements, it's not simply because there are more space actors. There's something else going on. The vast majority of those arrangements are bilateral. That's why they often go unnoticed. They might be not very prominent. Many of them are copy-paste from earlier agreements. But this enables us to do some network analysis. This is different countries that are related to each other by arrangements. And so we can see who are the hubs, who are the countries, what are the different countries that signed several agreements with a lot of other countries. You have, for example, of course, China and the US, but you also have India here as an important hub. And this is for private actors, non-state actors. And we're at this stage where we're also reading those arrangements. All of those arrangements are actually read by two different people independently to make sure that they come with the similar coding. We're looking for specific provisions. We're not looking exclusively at provisions related to space debris, but we're, among other things, looking at provisions related to space debris. Around 10% of those arrangements will include one provision at least related to debris. So this is more or less where we're at currently.
What a treasure trove of data. Thank you so much, Jeff, for highlighting some of the recent results with the group. Any questions, any comments? I agree, Scott, so cool.
Eytan, you might want to follow up on that.
Yeah, Eytan, please feel free, including discussing, next steps.
Yeah, so I'm at Laval University, and in a couple of weeks I will join the Ostrom Workshop to work on the
which we're very pumped about.
And this will be to work on the new project that its title is Polycentric Multilateralism. This is a joint project. Of course, we have Scott, we have Danielle Wood, which is here, Aparna, I see also here, David Colby, and of course, Jean-Frédéric. It's a project that is funded by Carnegie, and it is building on the database that Jean-Frédéric mentioned. It's a very extensive database, and the aim is to try to provide or to empirically test polycentricism, but for the global commons. As we know, what Elinor Ostrom did, her empirical study was mainly on the local common, on local commons. She did note in a couple of places that those lessons should be relevant also to the global commons. She had like an obiter, what we call in one article, and also in a joint work that she did with Bob Cohen. But as she also mentioned, it wasn't empirically tested. And now that we have this unprecedented data set that was built at Laval University, we have the chance to explore that. So this we are going to begin, and we will share with you more as we go along. And maybe a short note: there is another project that also Scott and Jeff we are working on, which is governance of the nexus of the space and cyber. And I mentioned before that we will, the first speaker, we will reach out later about that.
Fantastic. No, thank you so much, Eytan. And we of course are eagerly awaiting your arrival. And thanks again for your patience as we work through all of the red tape. So that's going to be fantastic. And that's really going to help us continue to catalyze these discussions that we're starting today, and leading to not only some really groundbreaking research, but other opportunities to convene virtually, and let's hope in person sooner rather than later. So that's fantastic. And just in the 10 or so minutes we have left, I'm wondering, first, of course, any comments, questions for either JF or Eytan? Okay, sorry, I think I'm back. All right, yep, talk about cyber issues. Okay, there we go, I'm back. Any questions, any comments, please feel free, briefly. And if not, we'll turn to, and use the chat, of course, too. And we can turn to Marco for an update for the follow-up to the very successful, I thought, and many others thought, I know, ISC Space Commons Conference from earlier this year. And any other updates you'd like to share, Marco, along those lines?
Yes, thank you. I will give a little update on what happened in the space conference. So this happened in February. So this was the first of a series of 10 conferences on the commons we did this year. And so it was organized by the ISC. And so one trigger was the kind of also statement that outer space was not a global commons. So that was that stimulated a lot of debate. But there is, of course, as we all know, there's a lot of commons issues related to space. And interesting is that, yeah, we had also actually perspectives from indigenous perspective. In a way, this space has many different actors, and I had not thought about it's not just technology oriented in that way. There's so many different actors, and that was one of the, I think, highlights from this conference, that a lot of social scientists came together to talk about these issues. So this was the steering committee. You see some familiar faces. We had a number of live discussion panels. We had people submitting pre-recorded videos which were discussed in these live discussion panels, and we had about 150 participants. So so people could watch the videos in the days before, and then we met together to discuss some common issues. So this was this went very well, and that also led to that people really appreciated the conference a lot. Some highlights was there was one event was Declaration of the Rights of the Moon that was stated, which was kind of an interesting initiative. You can also sign this declaration if you want. We had student presentations, and we had also Best Student Award. And there is a special issue going on the astropolitics. I do not know the current state of the special issue, but that was one of the outcomes. So, well, there were a lot of praises, maybe because a lot of, well, I think a lot of the virtual conferences might have been less interactive than we tried to do. So that was great to see. Now, given a lot of the requests that we are exploring another conference, we are thinking about the fall, in about a year from now. Would like to hear also from you, what would your, if people have some kind of preferred dates or dates that certainly we should not do, but we are exploring at the moment, so it's nothing is defined. We are writing a proposal for the ISC. And So besides the conference, I'm doing also some research with related to the comments on Mars. And that's basically a behavioral experiments with the context of space exploration. We now got a NSF grant where we are studying. So the Mars context provides us the ability to look at commons issue under a lot of uncertainty, which in a way was also addressed in some of the earlier talks. And I will show a little clip that we use as a teaser to recruit participants. At the moment, only ASU undergraduates for IRB reasons, but hopefully in the future we will make it broader available. Just get an idea what the game is about.
Ever dream of living on another planet? Come play in the Mars Madness Tournament. Welcome to Port of Mars, a game-based social science experiment for the future of space exploration. Play as one of 5 members of the first human community on Mars: researcher, entrepreneur, politician, pioneer, or curator. Cooperate to keep the community alive while competing to gather the most accomplishment points to win. Mars is a deadly and uncertain environment. Expect the unexpected. Chat with other players to plan strategy and make trades. Invest in system health to keep your community alive, or invest in influence, science, finance, government, legacy, culture to purchase accomplishment points. The player with the most points at the end of the game wins. But if system health falls to 0, everyone dies. No one wins if everyone is dead. Winning players go on to compete against other winners in the tournament to determine the Port of Mars champion. Make Mars history while creating a thriving community on the hostile red planet. Sign up to play Port of Mars today. Space is now open. Port of Mars is a social experiment for the future of space exploration. Only open to ASU undergraduates.
Okay, well, yeah, so you can see we have actually the PI of the project is a theater professor. So he came up with the idea of the game. So, but yeah, we are trying to, the idea is to have a large number of people participating in these tournaments, and that allow us to study commons dilemma with uncertainty that we cannot do with traditional lab experiments. So the game is getting pretty stable, but yeah, we are now trying to, every semester we do a tournament. So far the tournaments are being relatively small, also to get everything set up, but we are trying to yeah, increase, and hopefully in a year or so we can do something beyond ASU. You can imagine there are some ethical challenges to because we are not there during the game. So we have to make sure this is keeps a safe environment. So I want to stop here because otherwise we are running out of time anyhow. So
Marco, that was fantastic. I really hope we can open it up beyond ASU because
yeah, we want to bring it to K-12. So that's people from education are involved too. Yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely. And speaking of, K-12, we are looking to engage more with primary and secondary school teachers on various aspects of the Commons, including space. As you all see, the Space Commons children's book is proceeding. Still would love to engage subject matter experts like yourself as that gets written. And the idea is to have that published, by probably late next year. And it's going to be available 10 plus languages for free on Storyweaver. And then we'll go across other Commons arenas, including environmental justice, knowledge commons issues. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Excited about that project too. I did see a note from Arpana. So if you'd like to say a quick hello as well, given you're one of the core members of this new Carnegie partnership, please do so.
Thank you so much, Scott. And thank you, everyone. And I know we're coming up on the hour and I don't want us to have a Cinderella moment, so I'll keep it brief. My name is Aparna. I'm a cosmologist, but have become increasingly involved in space policy in the last couple of years. I have worked with Indigenous communities and tribal youth for over 20 years. My own perspective, which I respectfully add to the team, is that I'm really interested in seeing space continue to be a scientific, cultural, and environmental resource for humanity. I believe that humanity is the broadest stakeholder in space, and along with all the astronomy and everything else that's going to be done with space, enjoyment is important connection to our shared ancestor of space. I really thank to be a part of this. I'm really here to listen and learn. And I think as we move forward, there's such a investigation, questions asked, we can share together. I know that there are many initiatives and uses and concerns in space, and some of them are going to be orthogonal, and that's okay. That's okay, because ultimately what we all want, whether we want to do something with space, like have specific uses, or we want to preserve it for our number of reasons, for science or cultural purposes, there's so much rich learning and co-creating to be done. Ultimately, I think we all want it to be available, not just for the next 5 to 10 years, whether it's for galaxy exposures or the new space economy. We want to still be able to access, appreciate, and use it for decades and centuries. So I think there are real shared goals that we can all come around as we co-create a new framework. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Arpana. That was a wonderful note to end on, and a great reminder of our common heritage that we're looking to protect here. So lovely. This has been fantastic. Indeed, this recording will be available on the Ostrom Workshop's YouTube channel, just like all of our other, public events. This is not the end, of course. This is just the beginning of these conversations, which will certainly be continuing in the new year with a lot of exciting initiatives in the works. Thanks to all of you. Just as a quick reminder, there is one more research series event next Wednesday at noon with the Political Economy of Pandemics Working Group, led by David Stedelman and of course Gustavo. And then we have one more colloquium. And remember, next week, we also have the Food Commons Conference, the one-day Food Commons Conference on December 9th. So thank you all so much for joining. If you'd like to, hang out for a few minutes and chat, please feel free. But the hour is up. Thanks to all the presenters. That was just fantastic. And I hope you all have a wonderful holiday break if we don't see you before then. So thanks so much again, everybody, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.